Hey, this is Chris Caffery from Sabotage, TSO, and Spirits of Fire, and you are listening to Rock Overdose.
Hi, Chris, and welcome to Rock Overdose, Greece. How are you?
Thank you. And sorry about the name being wrong. Like I said, I'm blind.
Never mind. It's been almost 13 years since our first interview. It was for a radio station where I used to work there. 13 years ago, we chat first time for Rock Overdose radio broadcasting. Many things, I suppose, have changed since then.
Yeah.
The only thing that we didn't manage to see is Sabotage together.
Yeah, I know, and ever since then,
the most common question since then.
Exactly, and the question hasn't changed. It's always been the same, and I think my reaction has always been the same. Everybody knows exactly how I am. I'm just like everybody in Greece and around the world that's a Sabotage fan. It's like I got to play in that band, but I'm a huge fan, so I'd love to see it happen. I grew tired of trying to say when, if, or will it, but I do know that last year we did start writing some material. Now what's going to happen, I don't know, but it was at least fun for me to be in that position to where I was once again exchanging music with John Oliva. So I was at least sending him music, he was sending me music. Mm-hmm. So when people say that Chris Caffery's optimistic about Sabotage, well, it's like obviously because it was the first time in 20 years that me and John had done writing. I think the last actual writing I did with John was for the very first Circle of Circle record, and I had some stuff on his very first solo records. And other than that, I hadn't really written music with John since we were writing Poets. So that was fun for me just to start working again with him in that way. So he's such a great songwriter. I always see him. I see John every year. We're always working together with TSO, but this was the first time that we were like actually writing music together. So it was fun. We'll see what happens. Like I said, I've been saying the same thing for 20 years. So if it happens, it happens, and I'll be there. But right now, at least we started doing some writing, and we'll see what happens in the future.
Maybe we are closer than ever to the things.
We could be. Well, since there was nothing going on and there's something going on, that I could say that's closer. Okay. Having something is closer than nothing.
Okay. So let's start from the beginning. When did you start the guitar, and what made you pick it up?
I mean, I just think there was something about the electric guitar that always did that to me. And I think the initial one that got me was always the Les Paul. There was just something about seeing the Gibson Les Paul, and you would see that a lot on TV shows and things when I was a little kid. I mean, I was born in 1967, but I probably started remembering life in the early 70s, and you would see a lot of rock bands. And at that point in time, when you had your Led Zeppelins or people, there was always that Les Paul. And I was a Beatles fan, and my neighbors had gotten me Wings Over America, the live record, the triple live record. And I think that was the first thing. I might have been around 4 or 5 years old, and I just remember seeing the double neck guitar and the smoke and the bubbles on that cover, and it was just something really exciting about that. I always loved the heavier music. Now I would go into stores and stare at guitars, but I was from a family who didn't have a lot of money, so I couldn't really afford anything back then. But when I was I want to say probably 7, or I think I was 7 years old, in the year when Kiss Alive and the first Boston record came out. And those two records I bought on the same day. The first two things I ever purchased from money that I had from, I think, raking leaves at my neighbor's house. I was like 7 years old. And when I heard Kiss Alive, I think that's what really threw me over. And Ace Frehley, I think, was the guy that he had that Les Paul and he had that look, and he was the spaceman. So, I loved it that way. When I was about 10, I think I really started playing guitar and got my first ones. And then when I was 14, I did my first club show, and me and my brother had a band that was called Anti, which is ANTI, and we were opening for bands like Metallica and Twisted Sister and other bands in the clubs. But we always had trouble finding a singer we liked. And I just remember when I was 17, I was out at a club in New York City, and I met the singer from the band Heaven, Alan Fryer, the Australian guy. And Mitch Perry had just left Heaven, and I knew about that. So, of course, me being the anxious little 17-year-old kid, I went and I got into that band, and that band happened to be produced and managed by Paul O'Neill at the time. And from there, that's basically where my career had started, with that whole family. And Paul started working with Mountain King and Savatage the next year. And it was at that very beginning that Paul kept telling me that this band, he kept saying this band's going to be huge, but they need another guitar player. Paul always thought Savatage needed to be 2 guitars. That was his push on to Savatage, which was funny for me because Savatage and Chris Oliva didn't want another guitar player. So when I first came in, it was like a push-pull between Paul and the management side of Savatage and what Savatage, the band, wanted. But me and the Oliva brothers and Wackles and Johnny Lee, we got along really well, and it sounded really good. So they decided to put that position into Savatage. That position of a second guitar player in Savatage was made for me. That never would have happened if I wasn't there, which is kind of why another one of the reasons why I always felt bad about leaving to go work with my brother. I should have just stayed and saw what was going to happen. But my brother was getting very depressed about me not working with him. And me being a young kid, I sided with my brother. But I think nowadays, when you see people play in 10 different bands, it's okay. But back then, you just wanted to be in one band. And I think that's kind of where I was. It's like, I love being in Savatage, but I went back to my brother. But me and my brother went apart so far musically that it was only within a few months that I realized that, I'd made a mistake. And when John left Savatage, me and him got together and just started hanging out. And that's when Dr. Butcher was born. And then I was back in that family forever. It was really only about one single year that I was away from working with John or the Olivas or that whole family. So, and I was almost back in Savatage for Edge of Thorns. Chris wanted me back, but John wanted me in Butcher. Then Chris almost left Savatage to join Dr. Butcher. So we were always, together and working together. And, my main regret, of course, comes because of the years that I wound up missing with Chris being alive, his last years of his life. That's no matter how much I replace time, I can't replace time without him, so it's kind of, to this day, it's something that really bothers me. And when I see that Streets cover, and that's something that I'm not on because of my own decision. And it really, that is something that personally bothers me because I was there and I should have been a part of that, part of the Savatage history, a very important part of it. So, well, we're here now, and I'm doing well, and I'm still a part of that family. But I definitely have, my moments when I think back to what may have been if things were a little bit different at that time.
I see. Yes. And now, how are the things going for you at the beginning of this year, 2022?
It's actually going very well. I just got off a 2-month tour with Trans-Siberian Orchestra, which was very interesting. We went out and did our usual 2 months of arena shows in America, which for the most part, I tell everybody, were exactly the same, but completely different. And what I mean by that, on stage, we were still doing a TSO show, but off stage, we were dealing with head-to-head all the protocols and things we had to do to make sure that the tour stayed on in the middle of the pandemic year. So it was different. I mean, we got off that stage and we put masks on, and we basically stayed in our own little spaces for 2 months. You know, there was no backstage, there was no hanging out, there was no, when your days off, you didn't go out to the rock clubs or hang out in the restaurants. We were there with the mission, which was to get through that tour healthy and to keep everybody working. And we did it, but it was definitely different. You know, it was fun to play on stage again. I mean, for me, 2020 wasn't as bad as it was for many people because TSO always played November, December. So most of that year I wasn't going to be on the road anyway, but once it came close to November, December of 2020, and I realized we weren't touring, it got to be pretty too realistic as to what was going on. But we did a pay-per-view with that, which was something that brought me close to the band. And then I just spent time working on the new Spirits of Fire record, which, you know, is coming out in a couple weeks, and I'm very excited about that. So, you know, over the last few weeks, I've been doing the interviews, and the response has been amazing. So for me, it's really exciting to hear the type of words that are coming about this record, because people are giving it a reaction like the first Butcher record or like that first Metallium record, where they're hearing something that in the metal world is really exciting for them, and they like the music. And for me, that's all I ever really wanted to do, was make something that the people were going to like. So I'm happy about that.
Great. So could you tell us more details about the album, Embrace the Unknown?
Well, I mean, it's funny when you say that, the unknown, because that's where a lot of us were at the time it was made. But yeah, so, you know, the first Spirits of Fire record was made with Ripper Owens singing. And when Frontiers came to me about doing the second record, I was like, sure, let's do a second record. But then I found out shortly after that for some reason, which I still don't know exactly, but Ripper and Frontiers decided not to work together again. And Frontiers came to me and said, do you still want to do a record? And I wanted to write, you know, and this is before we ever really even knew there was a pandemic coming. This is, I believe, in January of 2020. And I was like, yeah, if you could find me a singer you think can replace Ripper, I will continue with this. I mean, Ripper was the main reason why I did Spirits of Fire. Not only was he a good friend of mine, but he's, you know, one of the best singers in metal. So I was very happy about the opportunity to do a record with him. So I started writing. I think I wrote about 18 or 19 songs, and Todd Hall from Riot was the first singer I started working with, but he wrote some really good stuff, but he wasn't able to give his time personally or you know, for the project. So he was very kind about it. He says, I just can't do this right now. So we kept looking, and that's when Frontiers went to Fabio, and they talked to the band, and they said, are you okay with this? And I think me and Steve and Mark were all on the same page. If he sings something and we like it, then it's fine. And he just started doing some stuff to the demos we had, and we were like, all right, this is going to work. And they took the producer Aldo, who also did Zach's Archangel record. He took about, I think it was 11 of my songs at that time, and just started working on ideas with Fabio. Then they went in the studio, and we went in the studio, and there were maps. It was funny because it was one of these situations where we're all over the world. This guy was in New York, and Fabio's in Italy, and Steve and Mark were out on the West Coast of the United States, and we just kept working. And what I did that was different with this record than the last one was I wanted Mark Saunders' drums first before I did my guitars, because I really feel that to get a real true live feeling or a feeling of a band, that the record, especially on my end, can't be recorded to a click track. The drummer can record his parts to a click if he knows what he wants to play, but me as a guitarist, I want to play to the drums as if I'm playing to something live. And the first record, the drums were done after I did my guitars, and I heard ways that I would have recorded my guitar tracks differently had I played to those drum beats. Now, a drummer might not hear it exactly that same way as I did, but I'm a guitarist from the old school rhythm world, so I hear things a lot of times in a straight beat, and I was able to find how I could write my guitar parts to marry the artistic style of Mark Zonder and really play it like it was driving, a little bit different than Mark, playing to the beat alone, with my part playing like in a different type of beat connection. So I think in the end, when Steve played his bass to both of us, having that connection, he laid a piece in the middle of it that made this really sound like a full live band. And I love the way this record came out together for that reason. And with Fabio's vocal ideas on the top, it's just great. I told him, I said, I didn't want to do any vocal writing on this record, because the last Spirits record I wrote, the first 4 songs were basically all my writing between the lyrics and melodies. And I was kind of like, well, for me, if I'm doing all that, it just feels like a solo record for me with a different singer. And I didn't want that. I wanted this record to have a completely different feel. So it was the only writing I did was Spirits of Fire while this was going on. I didn't write anything else. Then I just focused on that. And I think the end product is just a really fun metal record. That's all I wanted to do. It wasn't like, I'm going to make the greatest record ever. Just like, no, I just want to make a really fun heavy metal record for people to listen to and enjoy. And I think that's what we did.
And regarding Fabio Lione, he used to sing more operatic and sometimes progressive songs. How did he fix with Spirits of Fire?
Well, he actually did that himself, which was the thing that I thought was the best part about this. He and Aldo, they knew what they wanted to do. And to me, I mean, I haven't asked him this question personally, but it sounds like Fabio had a lot of fun doing this record. And you obviously hear this element of his voice that you're not completely familiar with, but it's obviously there. And he knew he could do that. So for him to step up and do that kind of a metal performance for me was awesome. I mean, I asked a lot of people when I was first finished with this record, a lot of people like yourself who have decades of experience listening to every metal band on the planet. I asked them to listen to my finished tracks of this record, and not one person was able to guess that this was Fabio. So he literally took on what I would almost say is another character on this record, getting away from what you're used to with Rhapsody of Fire and Anger, and the way his voice was a little cleaner and more operatic in some spots. And he went and became the singer of Spirits of Fire with that metal representation. And people would hear it and they're like, well, it sounds a little bit like Dickinson and it sounds a little bit like Oliva. And it sounds like, yeah. And that's exactly what he made his own metal creation, which I thought was so awesome. When I listened to the record, for me, a lot of times you'll listen to a record you did for the first time and you listen to it once or twice. It's like, yeah, it's great, because the whole entire time you were singing, you had a singer or you're working with the band and you heard every version of it with that guy. I was getting the finished versions of these songs when they were getting mixed. I was finishing my guitars, but I was hearing all the vocals and everything way late in the stage. So when I got the actual mixed version of the record, it was kind of like the first time I ever heard it. So I've been able to listen to this record a lot, and I'm not tired of listening to it. It's fun to listen from the start to the finish. And it's a combination of everybody. I love listening to the drums, and Steve's bass is so awesome. And then you just listen to what Fabio did on top of it, and like I said, it just sounds like a band. I mean, if I put on the first Spirits of Fire record, there's nothing against that record. I always thought that record could have been a little bit better. And for a bunch of different reasons, I'm not going to go into them, but I just thought that record was good, but it wasn't as good as it could have been. And I think this record missed a lot of the marks that I missed, as what I wanted to have as a metal record with that first album. So I'm really happy with this one.
Great. And a couple of videos have already released, and both of them are over than 100,000 views. I think it's really
Yeah,
cool.
actually, the second one is today will probably cross 170,000, which is really awesome. I mean, the most views we had on the last record, which was 3 years ago, was at 145,000. So to have this one be over 170 within 2 weeks is really exciting. And I read the comments that everybody puts on, and they're coming from all over the world, from your part, from South America there. And you could see it's just a bunch of metal fans that are excited to hear something new that they like. And I am happy about that element of, the fans just saying, we like this. It's kind of when I was younger listening to metal, if you got, say a new Saxon record or a new Accept record or something that came out, and there was a song in it, like a Balls to the Wall or something that came out, and it just, all your friends in your metal circle seem to have the same opinion. We're like, wow, this is cool. And that's what I'm hearing with this, not comparing myself to Accept or anything. I'm just saying that reaction where it seems like everybody is genuinely excited about it as a piece of heavy metal art. And that's really cool.
Great, really great. It's good for the bands to recognize the music that you offer. So,
yeah.
Can you tell us the story of Spirits of Fire? How did all started? How did you all meet?
Well, basically, it's funny because everybody knows, besides my solo records, there's been very little things I've done over the last 30 years. I did Butcher, I did Metallium, I worked with people, I toured with Doro, I toured with Metal Church, but I kind of strayed away from doing other things just because I didn't want to be in a million different bands, and I didn't really need to as far as financially or anything went. So I wasn't looking for something else to do. Frontiers actually came to me. There was a couple of different reasons. They were talking to me about wanting to know if Savatage was going to do anything or if Butcher was going to do anything. And when I wasn't able to give that to them, they said, well, how would you like to do a record with Ripper? I mean, it was their idea to use Ripper and their idea to use Roy Z to produce it. Now, those two people, obviously Ripper's a dear friend of mine, and I'd played with his solo band and on his records and toured with him. So I was like, yeah, you know what? This is something I would decide to do, considering, like I said, I didn't really want to do too many of those projects. And I was like, all right, let's give this a try. And I, of course, knew who Mark Zonder and Steve DiGiorgio were, and we came together and we did the record. And like I said, there was some really good stuff on the record, but we were, I think, in the same way disconnected like we were in 2020 and 2021, but everybody had a lot of other things going on the outside. The pandemic kind of played to my advantage with this band and the band's advantage, where when we needed to work on this new record, people were home. And I think everybody got a chance to sit down and really focus on their individual parts for this record more. Not that everybody didn't have great parts for the last record. I think it was more or less what I mentioned earlier about getting that cohesiveness as a band. Whereas if you were like, even with myself, just play guitar. So you play guitars basically to a solid track and you send it out and you don't even listen to it past that. And you're like, okay, here it is. And the producer gets it. And he has to arrange it with a drummer who just played his drums and a bass player just played his bass. I think this time we all played to each other and created the music as more of a piece of art. And I think a lot of that came from the fact that we were kind of stuck in our own little worlds for the last 2 years at home, having to work on music. So, we have talked about the possibility of shows. I think right now it's safer to kind of wait until you know for sure that they're going to happen. I mean, because a lot of shows are happening, but there's still a lot of shows that are getting canceled. So I don't want to have somebody put a bunch of money into getting us somewhere to rehearse or booking shows or making merchandise and then turning around going, Spirits of Fire shows for June and July 2022 or moved to 2023. I'd rather have us set that up to when I know we'll definitely get a chance to play. So, from there, it's just, for me, it's a positive outlet. I enjoy doing my solo records, but it's a lot of work for me.
Mhm.
And I think you get a lot of expectations on yourself as times go on. So I think the ability to create my solo records is still there and it's still fun, but I think the pressure and the real fun of doing a metal record was alive more with this, especially with this latest Spirits one, there where I just was like, all right, I'm going to be Chris Caffery, the metal guitar player. I'm not going to be the singer, the producer, the businessman, which is what it's like with my solo record. My solo career I had to do all those different jobs. And to be honest with you, between me, you and the walls, it was a pain in the ass to have to do everything. So this puts a little bit more of the fun in the project than having to be all those different things. So, I already plan on writing more music for another one, just because it's a fun way for me. If I'm not going to do Dr. Busher, I mean, I'd like to still do a metal record. And this is a great metal project and a great metal way to have a band to do that. And I was already talking to an artist this morning about a graphic computer artist about bringing this fire spirit guy alive. So I think maybe by April, we're going to try to have some videos and some things done with the living, moving fire spirit, which would be cool. And being a big Maiden fan and things like that, it'll just be something for me to be a really fun outlet to have. If especially if we continue and Sabotage doesn't play, I still have my metal outlet that's not just me doing my solo records. And I think for myself on my solo records, it gives me a chance to branch together more of the different styles of music like I did with Faces, to where I'm not just expected to be a metal guy. It's like I could do all the different things I want to do with that by dumping a big bunch of metal somewhere else.
I see. So Spirits of Fire is a permanent full band, not just a project, which is going to make tours, new albums, and has more things to offer to the scene, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's how I'd like it to be. I don't want something to just be this quote unquote project. It's for me, I want people to be able to associate with it as a band. And since, I like I said, when we did Butcher, we never really followed Butcher further. So for me, if I could have this and use this outlet to be, the metal creation, I think in time it'll be fun to have that really develop as that metal outlet, to have that band. And as long as everybody's available to do it, that's how I'd like to handle it. I mean, of course, everything always gets labeled project nowadays because everybody's got other things going on. If this was all of us, our only band, I mean, I'm sure people would be saying that, everybody has a new band called Spirits of Fire, but everybody has things going on. It's just the way it is. I know people right now, they're playing in 10 bands. I can't keep track. I can't keep track of how many bands my friends are in anymore.
Yeah, I see. So let's talk about Greece. What are your memories of our country, Greece?
You know what? Nothing but the greatest memories I ever had in my life came out of that country. That I just kind of married the Greek people. I think that was one of these things to where I think a lot of my personality as a person and an artist and the music I like, I think it was just kind of like this real natural connection I had, with the Greek fans and even Greece itself. I kind of got, when a little sad when things were more difficult to develop with my solo band than I wanted them to be. And there was a lot of different reasons for that. I mean, as Sabotage started to part ways with playing, it gave you a little bit less attention in the media world and things like that. So when Zach and John were doing their solo records, they were doing tours and using Savatage in their live sets. So when the festivals became available, the opportunities for me to get my band to play were a little more difficult than I was expecting, because where I thought the immediate connection with Savatage and playing live was going to happen, these festivals already had John, or they already had Zach. So like, well, we've already gotten a singer from Savatage. We don't need the guitar player from Savatage. So, and I wasn't trying to develop being anybody from Savatage. I was really trying to sell myself as a solo artist. But, you know, a lot of the festivals and everything kind of took it on as to, you know, can you give us Savatage? And when you go to tour, there's a lot of costs, especially when you're traveling the world. And, you know, the money that comes from doing festivals is a lot of what sets up your base to be able to go do supports and other things and spend a week off here in between shows. You need that security blanket. And for me, it was one of these things to where I didn't want to have that kind of responsibility in so many different ways on myself as a solo. The solo thing to me, I did as a release because Savatage wasn't playing. I wanted to make music and use a lot of what I had written, but it was never something I did to be a pain in my butt, you know. And as the pressures of doing it on my own really kind of became more than the fun on the outside of it, I kind of just weighed back into like, I'm going to make records and create music, but I kind of walked away from making that something that I was going to put into a huge outlet at that time. You know, I probably could have pushed it further, but we had so many different things going on with TSO on and off, you know, the winter time. So it's like my schedules weren't very open to pick times to do things. I only had a couple months here, a couple months there. So, you know, I needed to find people who could play in just those couple months. And I needed to find places that could have me in just those couple months. So the puzzle became very hard to put together. You know, I say that when I think of the Faces cover, you got those little puzzle pieces on it. It was just harder to make things happen. And I didn't want it to be, like I said, a pain in the butt. But, you know, as far as Greece goes, when I got my deal with Black Lotus, I spent a lot of time over there, and I love that country. I'd love to get back there. I mean, I don't see any reason why, even in the future, maybe, you know, maybe me and Zachary or something can go there and do, you know, some acoustic stuff and go and play some of the smaller places and just meet with the fans and do stuff from our careers. And we've been discussing doing maybe something all around the world like that, where me and Zach kind of go around and just play and have some fun. You know, me do some stuff from his solo records and my solo records and both of our eras and Savatage, and just do some acoustic things and let the fans hang out with us and kind of enjoy what it was that we did over the last, you know, 25, 30 years together in those elements, you know. So because a lot of what I enjoy about touring is not just getting on stage and seeing those crowds. I enjoy getting into Athens and going to the little cafe and having, you know, coffee and the local food, or sitting by the sea and watching the water, or going to, you know, a little island like Spetses and just hanging out and enjoying your country for what it is. And I think that, you know, as we get older, that part of touring becomes, you know, as important as any of it. You know, it's you want to, I don't know, it's weird. I crave just being in the places that I was in. And it's not necessarily for just that, oh, I want money and I want the crowd and you want that attention. I just, you know, I miss walking down, you know, the streets of Amsterdam at night and looking at the people and the lights, or I'll miss, you know, being down in Brazil and going to those Rodizio restaurants. It goes to just, you miss more about, you start to think of the really nice experiences you had, going down the streets of Paris or traveling to the Acropolis and things like that. So I think you know, we have that in our lives as musicians, but sometimes we get such a little piece of our time to enjoy it. It would be like you run into Greece and you get to see these things, but you have that attention and that open time, but you never really get to spend it. So I think now I'd like to be able to go to travel to a lot of these places and enjoy where I am, and then do those kind of shows like I was talking about, where they'd be more laid back and personal, and I could, spend 4 or 5 days in the cities and get to enjoy them as a piece of, their art and their culture and everything in it. So, I mean, I think it makes me sound like I'm old, but it's like there were lots of things I saw, but there was lots of things that I missed, and you'll watch on the travel channels on the television and be like, wow, I was there, but I never saw that. And I think that that's a lot of what I'd like to add back in, as far as getting to see the fans and the music, but having, more complete journeys around the world, taking pictures and doing my art and writing my music around that, because it was easy to write when you traveled too. A lot of emotions and a lot of songs came out of being on the road. We were able to write riffs and ideas on tour buses and this and that. And I think that, some of that stuff specifically came out of being in different parts of the world. When Sabotage stopped touring, a lot of my global travel kind of slowed down. I did, like I said, stuff with Doro and my solo stuff here and there, but the amount of time that I spent traveling the world compared to traveling in the United States was a lot different.
I see. So is this your room there? I see nice decoration.
Yeah, I have pinball machines and my studio's down here. I've got like 12 pinball machines and a bar room, and it's kind of, if you could be down in this room, it's called a Silver Dollar Saloon. It's got bits and pieces of everywhere I've traveled on the planet. So it reminds me of a lot of different rock bars and places I've been. You could see 30 years of history on the walls if you walk around it here. So you got the Iron Maiden pinball machine is the one that's flashing right over there. It's the one that's on. But I got a Kiss one, and actually I'm thinking of picking up the new Rush. There's a new Rush pinball machine I want to get. My friend designed it, but yeah, I spent a lot of time down here. Actually, this basement, I take care of my mom now, and I came back to this house about 13 years ago to take over that responsibility and take over the house. And there was the first Dr. Butcher record. John Oliva was actually staying where I am right now in this basement of this house, and we wrote a lot of the first Dr. Butcher record here. So a lot of writing happened here. I wrote a lot of my Sabotage riffs for Wake Magellan and Poets and a lot of Butcher stuff, and there was a lot of music written in this house.
Great. Do you have something from Greece, maybe?
Huh?
Do you have something from Greece?
Yeah, there's lots of things. There's posters and things on the wall. There's definitely Greek stuff. I'd have to carry the computer around and look on the walls, but I have stuff all over. There's Sabotage posters and pictures all over the wall. I see from here, I can see Greece, I can see Japan. There's things all over the place here. So, and obviously anything that really happened with my first solo record, I mean, that all the artwork and pictures and everything, that was all done in Greece. So
that's great. So we are almost finished the interview, and we will finish as we started with Sabotage. How close are we to the reunion? From 1 to 100?
I can't answer that question. I'd just give it a 50 and say I don't know.
So we all know that Oliver writes Yes,
Yeah, I mean,
any songs.
like I said, with that, everybody always asks me that question, and it's pretty obvious that everybody around the world, the fans, want this to happen, as do I. So, if I could make the decision, I would say let's do it tomorrow, but it's not my decision. There's Sabotage as a band, and it needs to come from everybody together. So we're writing and talking, and unfortunately, we're still dealing with the world in its current state. So we'll see what happens. I mean, like I said, when we first started talking, this is the first time in a long time that I actually was writing music with John specifically in mind for us talking about Sabotage, where John says, I need a song that's kind of like this, so I was writing riffs like that. And that's kind of how that's been going. I wrote some stuff that sounds like, the first couple of records of Sabotage, and I wrote some guitar stuff that sounds like some songs on Edge of Thorn. So I've just been writing some things for John, and John's got a ton of brilliant music, and Al's been writing, and we'll just see what happens. I can't give a number, I can't give an answer, but all I could say is that more things have happened in the last year than happened in the 20 years before that. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. So, are there any other news that you would like to reveal through this interview?
Excuse me?
Are there any other news you want to say?
No, not right this second. I think other than the fact that I'm gonna be starting now to work on my next solo record, and Lord knows it'll sound like 18 different styles of music together like they always do, and I'll do that. And I'm working on a lot of different glass. I work on sea glass art. I make art from sea glass, so I'm doing that. And I have a little heavy metal elephant called Wilbur the Metalphant, and we have a company that we do work for charity, and I sell a lot of stuff through his Zazzle store. So I'm always constantly busy on something. So I'll be working on music and art, and people will be able to find that on my websites. And the easiest place is usually through my Facebook music page. But I have fallen onto Instagram. I had to get onto Instagram to do an interview. I got away from Instagram because seriously, the Russians hacked my Instagram.
Ah.
So I had a Russian steal my Instagram, got on it, and made their own password for my Instagram. So I had to go through the whole process of getting out of it. So for about 3 years, I never even went there, but I had to go back on to do an interview for TSO. So I'm back on it again. I think it's been a little around a year I've been back on there, but just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's me. I make music, I make art, and it's been my life.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, would like to leave a message to your fans, especially here in Greece?
You know what? I have nothing but great memories. The people that never had a chance to see me or Sabotage live, one way or another, I'm going to get over there soon. So, if it's with Sabotage or if it's by myself or with another project, I'm going to get there to play some music, and that I can guarantee. And I just want to thank everybody for, constantly being there. I wouldn't be making this music if I didn't have the reason to, and the reason to is the fans and the ability to make people happy and make people enjoy what it is that I do. Because if I wasn't doing that, then I'd probably be doing something completely different. So the fans are the reason why I do what I do. I don't do this for money. I do this for making people happy. And that's what I've always done.
That's great. So, Chris, I'm more than thankful for this interview.
No, thank you. I'm glad
nice
we were able to get it together. Hopefully it's not another. Hopefully we don't have to wait another decade before it happens again. So,
so thank you very much. Horse up.
Thank you. All right. You have a great day, and everybody stay safe and as healthy as humanly possible. And I'll hope to see everybody out soon, and pick up that new Spirits of Fire record, because I definitely think that if you're a fan of anything that I've done heavy metal in my career, you'll enjoy this record. It's a lot of fun.
Sure, we will. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.